So here are some pictures of different layouts using content semantic elements. Header, footer, a section. That section has an article in it and an aside. What's the difference between section and article? It's like the newspaper. So you get the newspaper and there's different sections. There's the weekend section, there's the business section, and then in that section, right, in the business section, right, there could be different articles, right? Or let's say in the weekend section, there's different articles. And here in the weekend section is an article about traveling to Africa, right? So a section could have different articles. But then in that article could have different sections, right? Here is going to Nairobi, here is going to Mozambique, here is going to Nigeria. I don't even know if all those countries in Africa, they sound like they are, right? And those could be different sections in the article. So you just kind of have to think about, is this a section or is it an article? What's the difference between a section and an article? An article can stand on its own. A section can't. So the analogy with the newspaper kind of breaks down, right? But it's better to think about that in relation to just an article in the newspaper. So, because the weekend section can kind of stand on its own, right? That's you can pick that up and kind of, you aren't left hanging. But if you picked up an article out of the weekend section and some of the sections in the article weren't there, you might be like, well, how's the story end? What's the rest of the story? So articles can stand on their own, sections can't. You could pick up an article clipped out of any newspaper and you could read it and that's the whole story. It stands on its own. If you pick up a section from that article clipped out of that article, you'll be like, what's the rest of the story? So articles stand on their own. That's the most important takeaway. So here's another one, header, content sectioning, nav, content sectioning, section, and then an article, not in the section, just next to it, and then an aside, and then a footer. And then a header, a nav, an aside, a section with two articles in it and a footer. And then a header, a nav, and there's a header in the nav, and then an article, and there's a header with two sections, and then there's a footer, and then an aside with three sections, and then a footer. So that's basically it for semantic HTML. So, yeah.
What's an aside?
An aside is like, oh, by the way, we have an article on traveling to Africa, and then an aside might be, how to buy the best airfares to Africa, right? It could just be a little aside. It's like something that's on the side. It's an aside. It's like, oh, by the way, right? So if we look up the exact definition of an aside, like what's it good for? Aside represents a portion of a document whose content is only indirectly related to the document's main content. Asides are frequently presented as sidebars or call-out boxes. Right? So here's an article, and it's about a Disney movie, The Little Mermaid, and an aside, the movie earned $87 million during its initial release. More info about this movie. All right, so that's some examples of using sectioning. I'm just scrolling here to kind of, I guess we'll talk about each of these things and how they're defined so we understand just the exact definition of each of them in the next video.